Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am Michelle Morris from Consolidated Planning Group. I am so glad that you're here today because we have a fantastic speaker, Dr. Andrea Malkin Brenner. Did I say that middle part right?
Malkin, yeah.
Malkin. And we have a little bit of a new topic today. We're going to be talking about your changing role as a parent as your child goes into college. You've been a great parent all this time already, and you've worked so hard to advocate for your child, and now they're getting ready to go into college, and suddenly things are going to be a little bit different. There are going to be some changes. So we're going to be talking about some of those things and how to be a great college parent. You're already great parents. We know that because you're here and you're learning and you're helping your family. So before we go into Andrea's topic, I would like to go through a few things that Consolidated Group Planning Group offers. And on the next slide, please, you can see that we've been doing this for about 30 years. We've been in the financial services industry. Now, Consolidated Planning Group is an independent, holistic financial planning firm that focuses on families that have some individual in their lives who has special needs or a disability, whether that be intellectual or developmental. There's a lot more planning that has to be done, and we can help you with those things. We are located just outside of Houston, Texas, but we serve families all across Texas and all across the United States. We've like I said, over 30 years of experience, and we are members of the Special Needs Planning Academy, and we are nationally certified Social Security advisors. So, we take it one step further, or two steps, or three steps, depending. And we're always interested in continuing our education and making our services even more valuable for our clients. So people come to us for special needs planning, and you might be thinking, well, what does that entail? We're talking about things like protection plans for your family, thinking about lifetime care and what happens if a parent lives too long or passes away early or becomes disabled along the way. Who is going to take care of your loved ones if you're not here? We help a lot with transition planning, ABLE accounts, and we're here to advocate for you and to educate you because the founder of our company, Allison, has two kids who have special needs. And when they were going through all of this, when her kids were becoming teenagers, she saw how difficult this all was. And she said, that's it. This is my mission, is to help other families not have to deal with well, you have to deal with it still, but it won't be as difficult for you because we're going to help you get through the maze of special needs planning. There are over 263,000 financial advisors across the United States, and fewer than 200 of us focus on special needs planning. So that's less than 0.1% of all of the financial advisors in the United States that understand the nuances and the things that you have to watch out for. So that's why we do so much educating and all these free webinars to help you. The next slide talks a little bit about some of the questions that we know keep you awake at night. And that biggest question, who is going to take care of your child when you're no longer around to do it? Well, it's really important that no matter what age your child is, you start planning now. We can't go back in time and say you should have started planning before, and there's never a too early. So we just say now is the time for you to start planning for your child's future. Think about what you want their future to look at, and by starting now, you have more time to make changes, to make a greater impact, and to build your team of professionals and loved ones who will be there for you. Think about what educational options there are, which we're going to be talking a lot about today. There are vocational options. There are residential communities, whether that be partial care or full care, or day programs or full residential programs. But all of these great resources and opportunities for your child, they could have waiting lists. So look early into those and figure out what might be a good fit for you and for your family. Tour these different communities and programs and get on the waiting list early. And then our final bit of advice, I think, before we turn this over to Andrea, is just be careful if you're thinking, oh, my son's sibling, his older sister is just going to take care of him when we're gone. Well, maybe they're both happy about that right now, but in the future, needs can change and evolve. And maybe at that time, the younger sibling will say, she's been my sister all this time and now she's going to try to be my mom. That's kind of weird. I don't need to do what she says. There might be a little bit of resentment there. And for the older sibling who is going to take care of their loved one, maybe they're thinking, I totally wanted to do this when I was 20, but now I'm 30 and I've got my own family and my own needs and my own job. And this is a little bit of an obligation that I didn't think through. So you don't want the relationship to be obligatory or resentful. We would advise that you keep the sibling relationship friendly and pleasant, rather than just saying, oh, the sibling's going to take care of them. Okay. So I do have a few more slides at the end, but a couple more things I just want to throw out there. This webinar is being recorded, and we will send everybody who registered a copy of the recording and a copy of the slides. So you will have all of that later on today in the email that you signed up with. And then the other bit that I want to just let you know is that we cannot see you or hear you because we're in webinar mode. But I am keeping an eye on the chat box. And if you have any questions or comments you want to put in the chat box, we will get to those as much as we can. It might be saved for the end of the presentation, but we will get to your questions and comments. So I think that's it. That's all I've got. So thank you again, everybody, and especially you, Dr. Brenner, for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Michelle. I am really, really pleased to be here. I have done a couple of talks already for Consolidated Planning Group, and they're a wonderful group, and I'm thrilled to be back and really talking to parents about the difference between being a high school parent and a college parent, because that's not something that we necessarily prepare for. So before I start, I want to just a couple of housekeeping details. As Michelle said, this will be recorded, so you don't need to take furious notes. There's going to be a lot of text, but you will get all of this. The second thing is my fault is I create my slides in Canva, and when they were changed over to the presentation style, there's a little bit of font funniness. So you might notice those. They bother me, but everything is legible for sure. So
no judgment here.
Apologies for that. And then the third thing I want to say is not to really be overwhelmed. There's a lot of content here. Some of it you might say, I know that already. Some of it you say that doesn't apply to me, my child, my family. And some of it you might say, we're so far away from thinking about this, right? Maybe you have a high school sophomore and you're thinking maybe there's going to be a gap year even after high school graduation, before college. So this is something in the future. There is a huge developmental change from that, sophomore, junior high school brain to that first year or even second year of college brain. So please don't worry. If your 17-year-old is absolutely not ready for a lot of this stuff, you'll be amazingly surprised by what the changes that will take place between 17 and 19 or 20-year-old brain. So that's all keeping all of that in mind. So a little bit about me. I am a sociologist by training. I have a PhD in sociology. I was a professor for 25 years, actually studying sociology of the first year student. And I taught at American University in DC, where I live. I'm also the co-author of the book, How to College, What to Know Before You Go and When You're There, which is a book in many, many colleges as a mandatory reading book for incoming students, also read by a lot of parents. And I spend my time speaking at high schools and colleges all about the college transition to different populations. My latest venture since 2021 was founding the Talking College card deck brand. And these are discussion prompts and insider tips for college-bound students and those helping them on their journey. And I'm actually thrilled to announce our newest deck, which is Talking College College Ready. And it's specifically discussion prompts for college-bound students with learning differences. It's filled with insider tips and resources. Some of those can be used with mentors, mental health professionals. They can be used with executive functioning coaches, teachers, or parents. So just something to keep in mind. So one of the things I do when I talk to high school parents is I work backwards. And I think that's different from a lot of the people in this college transition world. I do this because I'm a sociologist, as I mentioned, and my work is data driven. So what I like to do is to start with populations, looking at them and where students in their first year of college are failing to thrive. And I'm not saying failing, I'm saying failing to thrive. And so I look at the college environment first. Where are students failing to thrive in their first year? What avenues are not really honed in high school? And then I go back to high school families, specifically high school parents and guardians, and talk about how some of these college level skills can be honed at home, because not all of them are brought up in the high school classroom. So here are some myths of high school parents. The first one is that college-ready kids must excel both socially and academically. And that is absolutely a myth. Most students enter a college environment sort of messy. Their brains are still kind of messy. And college staff and faculty expect this. So if you have a student who has really got some social anxiety related issues, but they're exceptional in the classroom environment, they can certainly be college ready. And I would say the opposite. If you have a student who has no trouble making friends, they're very social, but they really struggle with time management and executive functioning, get their work done, that is also not necessarily something that has to be perfected before they can walk on a college campus. Number two, no one at college will get my kid. I hear that a lot from the parents I work with. And I will say, you know your kid better than anybody for sure. But one of the things that college faculty and staff have that parents don't have is years and years of experience and trend studies, right? So personally, I probably worked with 30,000 first-year students. So even though I may not know your child better than you do, when your child enters the college campus, I know that 18-year-old brain. I know where those students are failing to thrive, and I've seen it all. So again, it's something that you don't have to really panic about. Students are usually welcomed into college environments, especially smaller college environments, with open arms by faculty and staff. Another myth of high school parents is that teens don't want to learn from their parents. And of course, teens think they know everything, so they don't necessarily need to know anything. I'm a parent as well. But in fact, when teens actually sit down and have pointed conversations, curated conversations about the transition to college, regardless if their parents went to college or not, they left home as a young adult at some point. And it's amazing when those parents kind of open up and they stop lecturing, but really start sharing some of the stories and their fears that they had when they left home as a young adult. It's a wonderful experience for teens, our college-bound teens. And so in fact, they do want to learn from their parents. Another myth is that the college process ends with acceptances, and that is completely a myth. In fact, the college process does not end when that letter of acceptance comes, but actually the transition to college process begins that day. We like to believe that sort of like the Harry Potter envelope, adulting skills come with that college acceptance, and in fact, that's not true. So we really do need to start working at the high school level with our students. And then other kids have it all together, another myth of high school parents. And in fact, when I give talks, sometimes to hundreds and hundreds of parents, they look around the room and they realize I'm not the only one whose kid might be struggling. So I'm going to talk about a few points today. Number one is defining the differences between the role of the high school parent and the role of the college parent. When, as I mentioned earlier, it's pretty different. Number two, we're going to talk about how to encourage and normalize mistakes and challenges, right? We're not encouraging necessarily the mistakes, but we're encouraging planning ahead with your high school student about how those mistakes will be handled, right? So unlike the snowplow parent, when we try to push away all of the problems and kind of feed our kids an easy life, we really want to normalize the mistakes and the challenges that come their way. Number three, it's important to work early on some of these teachable and important college life skills. And I'd love to pretend that high schools do prep students for those life skills, but in fact, they don't. And that's something that families really need to step up and do. Another point I'm going to discuss today is supporting your student as they explore those campus resources and as they prepare to seek disability accommodations, if that's something they want to do once they get to college. And then finally, and probably most importantly, how you as a parent can shift the language to the student as the problem-solving lead, right? We are so good at problem solving as parents. We're experts at it. We've been doing it since our kids were little. But what we need to do at this point in their life is really figure out how much we can step back and how much they can step up. So I'll talk a little bit about that as well. So number one, defining roles for the following groups. So the college defines its role very, very well. It's in their mission, and pretty much every college mission looks similarly. So I would say thumbs up. The college does a great job for defining its role. It also does a great job in defining the role for college students. Again, in a college mission and similarly language that colleges put out in their communications, they talk about their students as lifelong learners and as leaders and young adults and members of a new community. And all of that language is wonderful. They clearly define the rules and the regulations, what happens if those rules and regulations are broken, academic regulations, behavioral ones as well. So that's also clearly defined. What's unclear is the role for the college parent. And there are many colleges that now have family engagement offices that step up and they do a lot of webinars and things. And I would encourage you, when your student is ready to head off to college, attend as many things that your college presents to parents as possible. Again, because they've seen thousands and thousands of students and where they fail to thrive. But it's understandable that parents can't really get off that gerbil wheel of being a high school parent if they aren't told how to be a college parent. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. And here's a chart. It's actually a chart from my book, but it'll give you an idea about some, and not every single one is going to be applicable to your family, but many high school parents do the organizing for their kid, especially when their kid has executive functioning challenges. But a college parent moves to the role of supporter, and that includes supporting our student to find their own resources, right? And I like to say we do not expect students to go from dependent to independent overnight when they become college student. But what we want to do is we want to shift all of that help that has come directly from parents and guardians to the resources on college campuses, right? So it's not that the student is doing it without support, but we're moving to the support that the campus provides. And much of that support is included in your tuition dollars. A lot of high school parents are fixers. We're really good at fixing problems. College parents need to move into the role of encourager rather than fixer. And I'm going to talk about the federal law called FERPA that actually sort of guards those students' records and what that actually means in terms of the shift from being a high school parent to a college parent. High school parents often remove obstacles. They provide daily reminders. They reiterate expectations. You'll see all those things in the left column. I hear from a lot of families, I know my student can make their own lunch. It's just easier if I do it. I know they can wake up with an alarm, but I'm just into the habit of doing it. It's so nice to be able to wake them up. This is actually problematic because if the student is not setting those guidelines for themselves and setting their own expectations, they really do show that they're failing to thrive in the college environment. I've actually had families who haven't given up waking their kids up for high school, and then all of a sudden it falls to the roommate, and that's not, of course, appropriate. See on the left column, when your child lives under your roof as a high school parent, and of course, some of our college students will still live under our roofs, but for those that are going off into new communities and a child is living under a different roof, well, what happens if you say, while you live under my roof, and then all of a sudden they're under another roof? What does that mean? That's something to think about. You're really not going to be there to provide those daily reminders, right? Do you have your chemistry problem set? Do you have your cleats? Did you remember your trumpet, right? So stepping back and letting your student fail in safe, small ways, right? Not going to derail their whole transition to college or their application process. But what's going to happen if that student prints out their paper and leaves it in the printer at home and you don't drop it off at school, right? Is that going to derail their entire future? No, but it might actually teach them, if you make a point of not dropping that at school, that, their grade may be lowered a little bit, or they may have to negotiate with their teacher and be an advocate for themselves. But these are the ways that we need to learn while our children are still at home and the environment is safe.
I just have to say, I'm writing that phrase down. That was really good. Safe, small failures. I love that.
Yes, absolutely. So FERPA, as I mentioned in the slide earlier, is the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act. This could be an entire webinar just on FERPA. I'm not going to go into too much detail. If it's not something you're familiar with, I would say Google it. But once your child is accepted to college, usually about the summer, maybe July or August before they head off, it's important for you to read all those materials, because your child's university will start sending you informations and asking you if you want to sign a FERPA waiver, which will allow you to have access to those 5 bullet points. If you do not sign a FERPA waiver, then your child has access to those, but you as the parent do not. And that surprises a lot of parents who think, I'm the one paying for college. What do you mean I can't see my child's disability accommodations paperwork or my students' grades? Well, that's what the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act does. It protects all of the student records, the privacy of all the student records, even when your child is 18 or attending college. I get asked a lot, what if they're 17 and attending college? It doesn't matter. If they're attending college, FERPA it will prohibit you from seeing all those things. So I'm not here to advocate for you to sign a FERPA waiver or not, but it's something that I really believe that families should be prepared for these new realities and responsibilities. And I will throw out that it's not necessarily black or white. I'm going to sign the FERPA waiver, I have access to all of these things, or I don't sign the FERPA waiver and it's all going to go to the student. There is a bit of a gray area, and there are different ways to do it. For example, I know families who say, you know what, I'm not 100% sure if you can handle all of these things on your own. I'm nervous that, for example, if you're on academic probation, you won't jump in and try to do something to remedy the situation. So we're going to start with the first semester of college, where I'm going to actually sign the FERPA waiver so I have access to all of this. But if I see that things are going well and you're acting like the young adult you should be acting like, we will withdraw the FERPA waiver in the spring, or maybe during your sophomore year or your junior year. I have other families who work the opposite way. They say, you know what, we're going to start out thinking everything's going to be great. And I, as a person who's probably paying for a good portion, if not all of your college, I do expect to see the grades at the end of the semester. That's going to be a familial requirement. And if things start to really go downhill, then we will sign the FERPA waiver moving forward. So there's all different ways to do it, and something that I just want you to start thinking about even while your child is still in high school. You don't have to make decisions till usually the month before they head off to college. Another thing I'd love to discuss is the concept of overparenting, and I can't stand that word. I've been in this college transition space for a while, and I work with so many parents. There is not a parent I have worked with who doesn't do what they do because of love, right? They are trying to do right by their kid, and they're trying to have their kid succeed. So I'm not a fan of the term overparenting, but I do like to talk about loving support versus detrimental enabling. And I think this is important. So when you think about those small tasks, making your kids lunch, right? Pushing them to get their homework done, waking up with an alarm, is you doing those tasks for them or doing more than you need to of those tasks? Is that loving support, or is that detrimental enabling? Are they requiring you or expecting you to jump in and bail them out? And there's a picture there of a teacup. And as I mentioned, I was a professor for 25 years. And I think it's important to note that a lot of faculty on college campuses refer to first-year students who struggle with kind of resilience, not struggle with poor grades, but struggle with resilience after something like a poor grade. And they refer to them as teacups, right? So there's a teacup, and they're so fragile that they could break at any point in time. So that's actually one of the reasons I created the Talking College card decks, is to kind of get some of those what would you do scenarios out there. What is your student going to do the first time they get a C on a paper? They might be an AB student before college. Or what if they find out that they're really tanking a class? What is their first kind of movement towards change? And so thinking about, is your child a teacup, and what are they going to do when they really face some tough situations in college? Is the first thing they're going to do reach out to you as a parent and text you, what should I do? Or are they going to kind of try to come up with some solutions on their own, maybe attend office hours to meet with a TA or with a professor? And I think it's also really important, especially with parents of college-bound students with some learning challenges, is perspective taking. And it's really crucial for any family to prepare for the transition to college. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about probably my favorite example, which is college move-in day. And what I hear a lot is the new college parent who's there, and their language is, it's the last day we can spend as a complete family, right? We're going to take a picture of you in your room before we move in, then after we move in, and you and your roommate, and you and the mascot, and you and the sign. And then, you know what? We really hit it off with those, your roommate's family. Maybe we'll stay for dinner. And it just keeps going and going and going. And to the new college parent, that's understandable. It's the last day they see themselves as a complete family. That said, that same day to a new college student is often the first day of their college life. So they're looking at the identical situation differently than their parents. And it's all about perspective taking. So I want you to kind of think about something like a college move-in day from the perspective of your student. How long should you stay? And it's interesting because college campuses are now getting the message that students want to start orientation. And so they're having things like a parent goodbye social at 4 p.m., which basically says, all right, parents, it's time to exit, even though this day might be a tough one and there might be tears. So think about that last day, first day, and perspective taking. Number 2 on my list, encouraging and normalizing challenges and mistakes, and really discussing how your teen will handle them in college. So we're not trying to avoid challenges and mistakes, but we're kind of thinking about them in advance and thinking about how they'll be handled. So here's a list of common first-year college student challenges. The first one is time management, and that is most college students really struggle with time management. And I'll talk on a future slide a little bit about why. They also have roommate disagreements, especially if your student has never shared a room with someone before. That's sometimes tough. Getting homesick is another one. And when I say this to parents, sometimes parents think, oh, they're going to miss me. And of course they might miss you, but really what students are saying in focus groups is when we're talking about homesickness, they're missing the ease of home. They're missing opening the refrigerator and there's exactly the food they like, or the cabinet and there are snacks. They like that there's a meal that's served to them, usually at dinner time. And they often miss pets. They often miss siblings. Of course, they often miss families as well, but they may be homesick for the type of cooking that they're used to, etc. So that's just something to think about. How can you bring, and maybe one way to do it is to send your child to college with, some simple recipes of things that they love at home, because even though they will be on the meal plan, as pretty much every freshman is, they will have a kitchen in their residence hall and they'll have access to a stove. So that's something that you can be working on with your student. If they're not used to cooking, that's something that you can kind of teach them how to make some simple recipes from home. A lot of first-year students struggle with their health, physical health or mental health. And of course, there are a zillion campus resources to help you with that. We're going to talk about that in a little bit as well. Another first-year college student challenge is course selection. And that is something that affects students at large schools more than students at small schools. And what ends up happening is that high school students come out of college, where they haven't had a lot of selection choice or choices of their academic subject matter. And they head to college and they think, I am going to study advanced astrophysics. And that's great, but they're not going to have that class as a first year student. And so there is a little bit of reality. Many colleges have a core curriculum, and those students are going to have a lot of intro related courses in their first semester, if not their first year of college. So that's something I love parents to prepare their students for. Yes, down the road, you will have all of these amazing, exciting courses that you've never been offered in high school, but they're probably not going to be in your first year of college. So something to be aware of.
Dr. Brenner, I will tell you one thing that completely blew my mind as a new college student. And it's so stupid and minor, but I had no idea. I picked out my courses and I went to my advisor and they said, "Oh, are you a morning person?" I was like, "No, why?" "Well, why are you choosing morning classes?" It just, wait, I don't have to get up at 7 a.m. and start classes at what?
Exactly. And it's hard.
And it's such a minor thing, but I was
No,
like,
you're right. You're right. And some college students don't realize that they have really this decision-making power for the first
yeah,
time. Um, the last one on this list is not being accepted into groups of choice. And this is something we see with all college students, especially students who have some social anxieties. So that could mean an a cappella group, that could mean a sorority or fraternity, that could just mean friends on the hallway. And so there are, small fish, big pond kind of an environment, right? And now there may be a, bigger pond than they were ever used to. And so there are lots of opportunities for them to make friends. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But they should know in advance that not being accepted into a group of choice is pretty commonplace in the first year of college. And they may have to, the first group of friends that they may start with may not be their best friends by that end of that first semester. So different than challenges are common first year college student mistakes. And these are the ones that almost every first year student makes. Number one, there is no doubt about it, your first year college student will lose or break something important. Hopefully that's not their laptop like in the picture here, but it might be a student ID or a winter coat. And again, are you going to be the first person to deal with this? Or are you going to come up with a plan of action in advance? What are you going to do if your cell phone screen breaks? What's the plan as a young adult? How are you going to handle this rather than just calling mom to figure it out? Another mistake a lot of first year students make is not using campus resources. And there are so many resources on a college campus, from counseling to academic support and tutoring, for language labs, math and statistics support. There's substance abuse support. There's support for sexual health, identities. I mean, you name it, it's on a college campus. But many students, especially students who really should be using disability support, do not use those campus resources. And so a campus resource is only as good as that student actually walking over the threshold and reaching out. A lot of first year students also make poor financial decisions. Hopefully a small poor financial decision may be something like they run out of their meal swipes on their card right before finals. And what are they going to do because they've eaten all the food? Of course, you can always add more money to their meal plan. But again, talking in advance about financial decisions and budgeting. A lot of students don't ask for academic help. They see that they have grades that aren't great, but they actually don't go to office hours or don't go to TAs, and that's really detrimental. Data has actually shown that the majority of college students don't start going to regular office hours of their faculty members until their sophomore spring, and that can be really detrimental for a student's GPA. Getting over or under involved in clubs and organizations, which seems a little bit, bananas, but that actually happens. And as Michelle was alluding to early, some of us, parents and students alike, we have trouble getting off that rat race of I got to get up at 7, right? This is just like high school. It's just like a bigger high school. And they get over involved because they're in the mindset of, oh, I have to have, a resume filled with leadership opportunities. Other students, Netflix and chill, lots of naps, lots of gaming, and they get under involved and they don't actually meet their new community. So my rule of thumb, and again, do what you want with this, but it's just some advice, is you encourage your student to look for 3 organizations or clubs to join, just 3. One, that's something that they're personally passionate about. So that might be a soccer, it might be gaming, whatever that is, where it's a personal passion, something that's fun and that they enjoy. The second would be something for others. So that would be a volunteer organization. That could be Panhellenic or fraternity sorority life. That could be volunteering in the community, volunteering maybe with tutoring kids in the community. Lots of opportunities for doing for others on a college campus. Some spiritual life are ways to get involved with that as well. And then the third one would be something for either their academic course of study or their career. And again, we're not talking about careers for 18, 19-year-olds necessarily, but if they have a science mind, or they really are interested in engineering, or they think they want to study liberal arts or a foreign language, figuring out what types of activities and clubs and organizations exist. So there might be a business fraternity, or there might be an economics club. Great idea to get involved. So again, one thing for yourself that's fun, one thing for others where you actually giving back to a community, and the third is something that is setting you on a career path or something having to do with your academic focus. And then finally, a common first-year college student mistake is making a poor social decision, often related to alcohol and drugs. In my card decks, I have a whole section on what that looks like on the college campus. What does binge drinking look like? How can you use the buddy system to help you, etc. And these are conversations that should definitely happen in the home before students head off to college. Number 3, begin early to work on some of these teachable life skills they will need for not only college, but also behind. And here are just some college level life skills, right? Do laundry, ironing, basic sewing. They should know how to read schedules and book plane, train, and bus travel. As I mentioned earlier, they should be able to prepare simple meals. Your college students should be able to care for and clean their living spaces, meaning how often do I change my sheets and take out my trash? How often, what does it look like to clean a window versus cleaning a surface? When do I clean out the fridge? How long till food goes bad? Learning how the family is paying for college. That includes the cost of college, whatever financial aid or scholarships they're getting. Really, a lot of college students, I'm always surprised, don't know how much their college costs and what a financial toll that might be taking on their family. Your students should know how to use a phone to make appointments and ask for help. And sometimes that's as early, you can start in high school, making your own dentist appointments and your own haircut appointments. And if that's something that's really, fills your child with anxiety, it's something to practice slowly over time. Because by the time they get to college, they will need to use a phone to make appointments with financial aid or their academic advisor, etc. Your students should all have their social security number memorized, and they should understand what information needs to be kept confidential. They should also understand the basics of health insurance. And I have a whole section on health insurance in my Talking College cards, because I think it's important for students to understand how to refill their own prescriptions, what a copay is, what kind of health insurance they're on. They should know how to treat illnesses and manage medication dosages, and know when to go to campus health services if they're really not doing well. You should be helping your student to keep and record a budget. You can start that in high school so they know, a couple trips to Starbucks and a trip to CVS really costs a lot of money. Where do those expenses kind of come from? Who's going to be covering those in college? And your student should know how to write a professional email and leave a professional voicemail. Some high schools are now covering this, but if that's not something that's covered in your kid's high school, it's definitely something you can work on with them.
I wish that whole list was just one high school class. Like,
Yes, it
teach
should
them
be.
these things, but
It should be. There are actually many high schools in California that are starting to do that. I'm seeing it more and more, this college transition course that's required. And again, these are all life skills, even if your student is not heading off to college right away. Maybe they're moving into a residential community, or they're going to take a gap year and work. These are all life skills that can be taught and should be taught. So these are some of the campus resources that are offered on almost all college campuses. Counseling Center will help with mental health, and they will also be a great place to suggest an off-campus therapist. So if you know that your student is going to need off-campus therapy in a new state, the best place to look at is your student's college's counseling center website, because they will have referrals to therapists locally. Same thing with their health center. Great place to find local medical providers if your student is going out of state. The Career Center kind of overwhelms a lot of freshmen, and I usually say don't even enter it before your sophomore spring, but just know where it is. That's your goal for your freshman falls. Know where the Career Center is. And that's a great tool for the first summer after the first year of college. Even if that student is coming home and they're going to be in a different state than their college, that Career Center can help them find a summer internship or job. A religious or spiritual community, if that's up your student's alley, is a great resource, a wonderful place for them to find support as well as peers. I mentioned clubs and organizations, and my suggestion for three ways to do that. Clubs and organizations are actually the #1 way that students find friends on college campuses. It's not necessarily their roommate or even their hall in their residence hall. It's not necessarily the cafeteria or classes. It's peer connections through clubs and organizations. So that is something that's so important for your student to check out in advance. And I would say one of the silver linings of COVID, if there were any, is that all of this information is all online. So every club and organization listed for your student's college campus can be found through that school online. So they can start and should start looking the second they know what college they're attending. Academic help is another thing that's really important, and there's so many resources from tutoring to advising, from faculty and TAs. There are usually writing centers on campus. Disability support is also really important. That's the last bullet point here, often ties in with academic help. That's the place that a student needs to disclose. That's something that they'll have to do in college if they want learning support in college. They do need to disclose the disability. I'll talk a little more about that. And disability support is a place to start. So, even when you're looking at colleges and taking campus tours, I encourage families to check out disability support, make an appointment. Don't necessarily just drop by, make an appointment with disability support counselors. Let your student lead the conversation. You as a parent can be in the room and listen, maybe add your 2 cents if you need to, and let that student start talking to a disability support counselor about what disability support looks like on a college campus, because it's quite different than an IEP or a 504 in high school. #4, support your student as they explore these resources and prepare to seek disability accommodations. And again, I'm making an assumption that all of your students will want to seek disability accommodations, but assuming that they do, here's the important parts. First, research the process. And the sad and frustrating thing is the process is different at every single college and university. It's not universal. There are specific campus questions, right? And that might be accessibility. It could be physical accessibility. What buildings are accessible to a wheelchair or braces? How accessible are the campus resources in terms of large print or audiobooks? All of those things those are called campus specific questions, and they can be asked of disability support at the campus that your student is either looking to attend or will be attending. Your student needs to be practicing narrating their disability. And that seems like a strange word, but really many high schools, either parents or teachers or learning support professionals have stood up and kind of been that voice. And in college, it's different. The student really needs to be able to narrate their disability. They need to understand what they need, what they have the rights to, and how to access that. In college, disability accommodations refers to what's called reasonable accommodations. And unlike in high school, where you might see one faculty, a teacher in a high school who says, because of this particular disability, we might give you an alternate assignment. That's not going to happen as readily on a college campus. So we need to find out what is a reasonable accommodation and what the college can do to bend with the needs of your student. And that's something that every website for campus disability accommodations will have. And that's something that you kind of need as a parent to understand, and your students will as well. The student as self-advocate, I mentioned that earlier. Hopefully they're doing that a little bit in high school when they're reaching out and talking to teachers. That's something they're going to have to do solely on their own. There is no parent in the mix in college. There's no such thing as a parent calling a professor, as it was appropriate for maybe them to talk to a teacher or a principal even in high school. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the role of the parent and guardian changes dramatically. And unless you have signed a FERPA waiver, you're really cut out of all of this process. So that's something that you need to decide as a family if it's right for you. So here is a chart that kind of lists some of the important academic standard changes from high school to college. I'm just going to go through it. And I would say as a professor, I would never want a student to put this much text on a slide, but I did want to get it all here for you. So number one is time management. I mentioned early, most college students wrestle with time management. And why? Well, number one is in high school, school begins and ends at approximately the same time each day. Most high school kids are in classes for about 35 hours a week, and they may have up to 7 different subject areas. In college, classes will most likely meet 1 to 3 times a week. One class might meet once a week, one class might meet 3 times a week, and their schedule would vary daily. So where they were in class for about 35 hours a week in high school, they're only in class for about 12 to 15 hours a week in college. And they may have 4 or 5 different subject areas. So very different, more free time. And that can be wonderful for making peer connections, for studying, for doing some sort of identity exploration, but it also is an opportunity for a time of wasting a lot of time. In terms of professionalism and personal responsibility in high school, parents might contact teachers or counselors. That's not only legal, but encouraged in many environments. Where in college, student is responsible for all of the contact with their professors and their academic resources. In high school, teachers often send reminders of the work due. I knew my son, who's now going to be a college senior, probably that's how he got through high school, is relying on his teacher's email reminders of what was due. And in college, that doesn't happen. Students responsible for deadlines. There's no professor writing on the board, don't forget this thing is due on Friday. That's really up to the student. In high school, there are many assignments throughout a marking period to assess progress and grades. So if you've ever heard your students say, well, Mom, I did lousy on this, but there's 8 more assignments in this class, so I have time to bring out my grade. That's actually true in high school. But in college, feedback is less frequent, and it often requires attending a professor's office hours to assess their progress and their grades. Where a student might have 20 grades in one class in a marking period of high school, they may have 2 or 3 grades. So every grade is weighted heavier in college and something to really take very seriously. Preparation for class is also important and something that a lot of students and families don't really think about. Teachers will often explain readings and relevant concepts in class in high school. So if your student is doing their homework and they're reading, let's say, something in a bio text, and it's really confusing to them, they might think, it's okay, it'll be explained in class tomorrow. It's okay if I don't fully understand it until then. In college, it's different. Most colleges have 14 weeks of classes, far fewer than a marking period in high school. And students are expected to understand what they read before class begins because professors don't usually spend a lot of time explaining the work that was assigned. They usually use that class as the jump off point, assuming that if the student was troubled with a reading or an assignment, that they have gone to office hours, they reached out to a peer or a TA, and they have really sought out some help. Big differences between high school and college. And then finally, number 5 of 5 is shifting language with the student as the problem-solving lead and beginning to discuss different kinds of college scenarios, what we call wellness and upcoming decisions. So I want to spend some time on this. This is a pain scale that you may have seen. If you break your arm and you end up in the ER, they will say, can you tell me where you are on this pain scale? And what mental health professionals on college campuses and counseling centers are now starting to use is using this physical pain scale to talk about mental health and mental health pain. So this is what's called the stress-distress continuum. And if you think about one side is kind of stress and the other side of the continuum is distress. And here we're sort of identifying stress as low-level stress that's typical of a college student and also of a high school student. If your student is kind of in that 0, no pain, probably not taking hard enough classes. There is something about college that is just kind of a low level stress all the time. And students have to learn how to deal with that, making new friends, finding their way around, new classes, new rules, etc. But the other side of the spectrum is distress. And that's where you really see your student not necessarily being able to handle their emotions by themselves. And they need a counseling center or one-on-one therapy or something even more serious. So what we like to do on college campuses is to talk about a numeric scale. So if you have a student with high anxiety, let's say, or high emotions, and when they come into a room, they will yell or they will cry or they will immediately escalate. It's wonderful to kind of talk to them about their number, which means where are you kind of low level stress on the daily? Where are you during exam time or an environment that's stressful? And then where are you when we really need to step in if we're at that situation where stress has turned to distress? And actually let families put a number on it. And I'll tell you why that's so helpful. When you get the call from your stressed out student, their first semester of college, and you hear, I hate this place, I want to transfer, I have no friends, I am miserable, I don't feel like everyone's smarter than me. Fear of missing out, FOMO is alive and well. Everybody does this and I'm excluded. These are emotions. And as a parent, it just pains us to hear that stuff. But if you can respond with, remember how we talked about that scale? Where are you numerically right now with your stress? And if their norm is 2 and they tell you that they're at an 8, you know that you need to step in and really kind of figure out, have you gone to your RA? Have you talked to the counseling center? Let's take a look at the website and look at the hours, right? And so this is something that I'd love families to do, is to kind of, instead of putting words with it, because when our student has escalated emotions, it's really hard for them to actually be able to communicate clearly how they feel. Is, are you a 3? Are you a 6? Where are you? And this has to be done in a family because every student's norm is different. I also think it's important to role play what would you do scenarios and discuss upcoming college level decisions. And that's actually one of the reasons I created my card decks. I have lots of what would you do scenarios. So here are a few from my card decks, and these could be great dinner time conversations. You can also create your own. Hey, student, are you able to narrate your personal health history to a medical provider, right? So let's say you sprain your ankle and you end up in the ER in college, or you feel really, really ill and you have to go to the health center. Are you able to narrate your personal health history? Can you fill out that form without mom or dad that says, these are my allergies, these are my medications, this is how much of my medication I take, what happens if I don't take my medication, what surgeries have I had in the past, what illnesses, etc. Number 2, how would you care for a friend who has passed out from alcohol use? And this is something that's really important because I do have a lot of families who say, my student is not interested in drugs and alcohol. They do not partake at all, and that's fantastic. And more colleges are having completely substance-free dorms. But you may have a student who does not party, but they do have a roommate or a friend who does. And so they should still know what to do in that situation. And then number 3, how might you as a student approach a situation where a new college friend can't afford things you can afford, or when you can't afford things that others can? And this happens a lot, where we often see our students coming from homogeneous social class. Most of our high schools are much more homogeneous than our colleges are. And you're going to maybe have a student that's entering a situation with friends of different socioeconomic statuses for the first time in their life. And many students say, I can't go get pizza off campus because all of my meals come from my scholarship on campus. And I think it's also important to practice reflective listening. And this is not something I invented. If you've taken an adolescent psychology class, you know about reflective listening. 2 great tips. Number 1 is, if your student does have heightened emotions and comes into a room or comes home from a night out and they have high highs and they're either upset or they're angry or they're sad, the question often can be, Do you want to vent or do you want me to help you problem solve? Because as parents, as I mentioned earlier, we have a habit, I have the same habit of stepping up and trying to solve our kids' problems because we're really good at that, right? And then using I rather than you messages is great to practice reflective listening, right? So I'm going to give you a great example. Your student borrows your car, they, with your permission, they go to a friend's house in another town, and you say, that's fine, just text me when you get there. And because they're 17, they don't. And you immediately think, are they in a ditch? Or, or you get angry because they didn't. And so using I rather than you message is great in this situation, right? If you were to say, you promised to text and you didn't do what you said, they're going to be on the defensive, right? Oh, I forgot, I got busy, somebody came to the car, whatever it might be, there's going to be a response. But if you twist it and start using I messages, I get really nervous when you promise you're going to text and you don't, make it your problem. That is a great tool for reflective listening. And you often, not always, but often get a better response from teens. And then it's really important to help reframe language used by young adults from what should I do to here's my plan, what do you think? And this is something that I do frequently with my own children. And when I work with families, I encourage this as well. If you have a student, your kid, who says to you, I've got this problem, what should I do? If your response can be, why don't you think about the problem and come back to me with a plan? It doesn't have to be a perfect plan. We can certainly tweak the plan. That would be a great way to start adult problem solving. That's terrific because many of us just jump in with the answer, here's what you should do. And we are absolutely not preparing our students for those adult decisions. And then I would conclude with this, which is redefining what adulting means. And if you do, and I have done focus groups and interviews with high school and college bound students, if you ask them, what does adulting mean to you? Here are the responses. It means going it alone. It means not relying on others. And then some kids say, it's a complete mystery. I have no idea what adulting is. But if you sit down in focus groups and interviews with adults, 40 plus, they respond, learn how to use my resources. I ask experts. I Google it if I don't know, right? I admit I don't know something. I ask family and friends for help, and I own my mistakes. And I think as a society, we're not doing a great job of redefining adulting for our high school kids because adulting really means using our resources. And that's what we need our college students to do. So what about now? This is the end. Number one, it's important to tease out your teen's specific needs for growth, right? I mentioned in one of the first slides that they might be struggling academically or socially. What are your areas of growth, my child, and how can we play with these? Or how can we improve them before you head off to college? Number two, think about ways teens can step up and parents can step back in your particular family, from making lunch to remembering to bring things for soccer practice to waking up with an alarm. Number three, remembering that roles for high school parents are different than roles for college parents. And then understand that growing up is not the same as being a grown up. And our students are going to have challenges and make mistakes. And so really, I'd love you to help your teens help themselves and take this central role as they prepare for their transition to college. And you can take a look here at my websites. If you want to follow me on social media, I do lots of free webinars. I do lots of giveaways of my products, and you can learn some more information. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Andrea. This topic is great. The whole time we were talking, I think, oh, I've got to send this recording to my son. He's living in Chicago. I've got to send this recording to him later so that he can answer some of these questions. And I hope he knows how to do all those things.
Thank
This has
you.
been fantastic. Thank you so much for your help. I do just have a couple of more slides, and we do webinars 3-4 times a week at Consolidated Planning Group, and they are always aimed at helping families who have an individual in their life who will need extra help or maybe not be able to be independent in the future. And this is just a quick list of some of the things that we cover. The next page will take you as a link This link, when you get these slides later on today, the link will be clickable and it will take you straight to our upcoming events tab on our website, where you can register in advance for these webinars. You can see what we've got coming up. And we always, always, always email a link to the webinar recording, and we email the slides to anyone who registers. So if you register, you'll get the information. You don't even have to worry about actually being here during our lunch hour. You can watch it anytime you would like. Our team is here. Again, we are located just outside of Houston. We've got 4 financial advisors and 5 staff members who help us keep everything in order. We're an independent firm, which means that, we are much more able to really look out for our clients and, not be stuck in a little box. We have a lot that we can work with. Finally, we offer a free initial consultation. The next slide shows a QR code where you can register for your initial free consultation. These are on Zoom. They usually take between 30 to 45 minutes, and that depends on you. We want, first and foremost, to answer your questions. What is coming up for you that you're worried about? Is it applying for SSI? Is it understanding the FERPA form? Is it guardianship? Is it a special needs trust? Is it how to save for retirement, and also how to know how much money your child will need to have for their lives? All of these things we help with. We want to answer your questions. Then we will get to know you and your family a little bit, and we will tell you how we work and what we charge and what our process is. I promise we don't bite, but I also promise we are going to be reaching out to try to make an appointment with you. So go ahead and schedule your appointment, and that way we don't have to call you. You can call us or email us. All of our links are there: the YouTube, Instagram, our podcast, and our Facebook page. So again, if you have questions about the financial side of things, call Consolidated Planning Group. If you want to get your hands on those great card decks or any of her books, or reach out personally to Andrea, her contact information is all there. It's all going to be sent to you. And I definitely encourage you to reach out to her as well. So thank you again, everybody, for being here with us today. Thank you, Dr. Brenner, for this fantastic presentation. We love having you, and we are so lucky that you're willing to share your information with us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
And everybody, have a great day. It's Monday, so make it a great week, all right? Bye, everybody. Thank you so much for coming today.